Yo, people, welcome back to the channel, and we're back with another episode of the new series, episode 3 of the Boundary Show. And we're here to discuss the Ashes and all of the other cricket news. So, yeah, let's um let's into it. But before, Money, how are you?
Yeah, good. Just enjoying all the sport that's coming my way. Some awesome tennis from the grass courts at SW19. I love how they look so pristine in the first week, but by the time the second week starts, all the grass is worn away and it's become more or less like a hard court. So most of the upsets will take place in the earlier rounds. But as far as the cricket is concerned, the less said about it, the better. And sadly, though, we're going to be talking about it a lot. So I'm ready to take my medicine.
Yeah, what is, I believe, of course, what says you said something around 50 runs England will win by, something like that. Um, that did not turn out to be the case. That turned out to be the other way around. But yeah, all heap of stuff to discuss. Of course, Bairstow, Johnny Bairstow, or yeah, is discussion. We've got the lineups, England lineups that come out for the third test. Um, we got the Mitchell Stark catch. We got the Steve Smith catch to dismiss Joe Root. What else? We've got Ollie Pope's injury and why he was forced to go on bet with that shoulder tear hurt. And then the short ball strategy, where it seemed like it was just about bowling short balls. It seemed like back into the 70s or 80s almost. But so yeah. Um, but where do we start? With this test. Again, first thing I reckon we can start with is the toss. Ben Stokes saying they're going to bowl. Oh, they won the toss, and then and um, it almost seemed like when they won the toss, um, when they won the toss, it was almost like they thought half the job is done because the pitch looked like it was going to um, favor the bowlers, and that's almost what we saw until the last bit of play. Of course, in the on day one, almost that last session, that's almost where they really started to 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 bat well. So yeah, sorry to bowl well finally. Um, so yeah, but what did you make of like the first day and how England approached it? It almost felt like they were just vibing through the match, if I can use that.
Yeah, the thing about England's bowling effort was that they just didn't seem to have that level of venom first up. And when you make a big call by bringing Josh Tongue in ahead of the likes of Chris Wokes and Mark Wood, um, based on the fact that he was able to get Steve Smith out in the county scene and also had a five for against Ireland, you know, why would you not want to give him the ball first up to see what he could do in those conditions? Because it is quite fair to say that James Anderson has seen better days, although he is still quite economical. He just doesn't have the penetration that he does. Stuart Broad, being a few years younger, is still able to hack it. And I also remember saying that it was a good toss for Cummins to lose because a lot would depend basically on how well England would, take advantage of those early conditions. Because yes, it would be overcast at Lords, and yes, the pitch would aid some seam. But once it would start to die down later on in the day, it would settle down to become a really, really good batting track. So the onus was on England's bowlers to really make inroads from the get go. And with a 60 odd run part, it was actually a 73-run partnership between Usman Khawaja and David Warner, which pretty much blunted the attack in a way. The bowlers failed to do that. And then there was a 102-run partnership for the third wicket between Marnus Labuschagne and Steve Smith. Then, of course, that huge partnership of 118 between Steve Smith and Travis Head. And, of course, Cameron Green ended up getting out a little bit later on. But England will basically look at that as an opportunity missed, I would definitely say, because you want to make sure that the opening partnership doesn't last for too long, and they couldn't do that. And that should have been the call for Stokes to have been a bit more proactive and bring Tong into the attack. And it was basically Tong who removed both the openers. He bowling them both with absolute beauties, really, from around the wicket to the left-handed batsman. I do remember you saying that maybe Tong was using the conditions very well, but Tong was also, running in with no fear. And it sort of begs the question that if he was able to do that well, coming in as first change or whatever, I believe he was second change actually, because Ollie Robinson was the first to come on. Why couldn't he have, come on a bit earlier? And of course, Tong and Robinson ended up taking 3 wickets between them for 98 runs combined, while Anderson was reasonably economical, but only picked up 1 wicket. Stuart Broad tried hard, but also ended up being hit around quite a lot. And it was a question of the experience of the Australian batsmen who knew how to play the conditions very well. Smith, in particular, was outstanding. Warner did his job. Khawaja was, scratching around a little bit, but also playing some decent support. Labuschagne also looked a lot better. Travis Head was quite magnificent in his support. And then, Alex Carey was a bit disappointing, really. Innings was promised so much. And then Cummins also, wielding the long handle. 416 probably looked to be, 30 runs short. But again, I would just go back to what I said earlier, that England had their chance to make early inroads in the Australian innings, and they failed to do so. And I think the fact that the likes of Anderson was found wanting has been reflected, of course, in England's team selection for Headingley, but we will talk about that later. And a special mention for the extras there. 12 no balls, with Stuart Broad being the guilty party for several of them. It was just
Yeah,
one of those performances which never really, looked good, and England ended up suffering. And special mention to Joe Root, who took a couple of wickets in the middle order, getting Travis Head stumped when he looked on course for a century. And then also in the same over, getting Cameron Green to fall victim to a rush of blood, going out for a 3-ball duck. So Root has definitely bowled quite well this series for a part timer. And if he can score a few more runs and take a few more wickets, he could be a candidate for man of the series, although it would be rather facetious to even consider him for the award if England fail to win. As I've said, it was Australia's innings. They did a really good job. Cummins did the right thing by not declaring too early, allowing them to get to the psychological barrier of 400 and go a bit further. I'm sure they would have liked a few more runs, but at the end of the day, they would have been more pleased with their performance in their first innings than England would be with their first innings at Edgbaston. And I think that declaration really, in hindsight, cost them the first test. We're going to talk about several factors that cost them the second test, but the poor display of the bowling first up on day one probably would be a factor.
yeah. I think like for day one, I believe what day one it's day one. Yeah, they lost only 3 wickets. So I said Ed and Smith. But Warner and Kawaja, uh, Warner was really impressive. Him getting to a 50, past 50, is now probably, he's got lots of confidence. Kawaja, bit of dip in form, but we know his game is going to take it slow. Um, and when we get to the second innings, again, he looked almost, um, he looked that better. Um, we'll speak later on Josh Tongue and now, of course, if when we get to that lineups. But for me, Tongue was probably the second best bowler. I would say it's between him and Broad. Um, you could maybe say Robinson, but I just he bowled six no balls, Ollie Robinson.
Yeah, I stand corrected there. It was actually Ollie Robinson who was the guilty
Yeah,
party for
so
many of those no balls. Stokes had three, and
I'm
Stuart
going
Broad
to
only
say
had one.
Tongue.
So, Stewie, apologies.
Yeah, I think Tang was probably one of the best bowlers in that first innings and throughout the Test match. Um,
Exactly.
look, what Tang he took picked up 2 wickets, 5 wickets in this old Test match he picked up. So I think Tang played really well. We'll get to there, and then Labuschagne Robinson. Can't remember his wicket now.
It was an edge
How?
behind to the keeper, straightforward. It swung well
Uh,
enough, caught the edge, and Bairstow didn't have problems getting
sure.
that.
Okay. Um. Well, then after that, Smith and Ed again, brilliant performance from Ed and Smith. Ed came down the wicket. Of course, with a watch on where we saw this. It came down the crease, missed the ball, stumped by Bessa. Um, as we move on to, of course, day two now. Cameron Green in also um he wanted to hit the ball out of the park at the top edge, almost like Ben Stokes, how he got out in the first second innings for England, just off a spinner. Um, and then Carey will be disappointed with himself. I think he would have liked to do a bit more broad while taking wickets. Stark disappointed from him, but um we know around, of course, England used the strategy, the short ball strategy at Edgbest, and they did use it again against Australia with Stark, Hammond Taysood, and Lyon almost all falling to the short ball. So yeah, of course, Pat Cummins now set on 22. I think those 22 runs were valuable. Lyon out for 7, Hazelwood out for 4. Again, we need to speak on Nathan Lyon. Um, but yeah, the bowling figures. What did you make of England's bowling and how the figures really turned out?
Yeah, I think for the first innings I touched on that really. It was Tong and Robinson who shared the spoils with 6 wickets wickets apiece, and then 2 for Joe Root, with Anderson and Broad not really picking up the wickets. I suppose you could say that Stuart Broad bowled a lot better than his figures would suggest, but at the end of the day, the wickets are all that matters. And I did say that England would look back on how they failed to capitalize on the conditions being in their favour, and they would look back and say, you know what, we mucked it all up. But I suppose should give them the credit for sticking to their task. Stokes came on, of course, and bowled 3 overs, but he was quite expensive and also was guilty of 3 no balls himself. In fact, of course, Broad was guilty of getting Khawaja out, bowling him out, only to realise that he had, of course, been no balled for that. So that's another example of how he might not have bowled too many, but that no ball was costly. So they struggled with their line and also their run ups in many ways. And that is something which they are definitely going to have to look at when they come together for the third test to be played in Leeds at Headingley. As I said, though, Australia's batsmen deserve credit for doing what they had to do. Green will look back on his dismissal and say, you know what, I shouldn't have played that stroke. And then, of course, Stark and Lyon didn't do, very much. But obviously, Lyon ended up bowling 13 overs in the second innings, but that calf injury really hampered him a great deal. And you know, we're going to talk about him further when we come to Australia's second innings. But the fact that he's now out for the rest of the series, which with what looks like a very serious calf injury, will be a huge loss for Australia. But I would like to talk about England's batting, and you can sort of lead the way with that if you like.
Yeah, England's batting. So I think Australia again. Before we just come there with that, let's get some comments. I just fan behave yourself. Of I know you, but I don't know how to pronounce the name. But yeah, behave yourself. Um,
Ekatike.
so keep hitting that like button. Yeah, please do that. Much appreciated. That's I will get to this comments of you. I have started to yeah. Um. So yeah. England's first innings. So well, it started off well with Crawley and Duckett. And then Crawley did this stupid decision by coming down the crease. He's and getting stunned by Carey off the bowling of Lyon. Um, but after Crawley was out, we saw the short ball technique worked very well for Australia. I believe, except Broad and Robinson, all of them got out with the short ball. So the short ball worked, definitely. Um, but it's it's interesting because England almost decided to, instead of playing the short ball conventionally, in a way that you identify which balls you're going to eat, which balls you're going to duck, almost that calculated move. They decide just to swing at everything. We saw Brooke get out with a Roy, um, Roy, what? Roy in this, or some, I can't speak today, but yeah,
At
awful
a
shots,
skokkend, as you would say in Afrikaans.
yeah. Mark Wood, yes, he is fit. We'll get to him also later on when discuss that lineups, but he is fit. And so yeah, awful shots. Roots, Joe Roots, money. You saw that instrument catch. Unfortunately, I can't show it on here, otherwise it will be copyrighted. But that's the instrument catch. Hmm.
I'm going to give Steve Smith credit because he obviously he did the right thing by trying to make sure his fingers were on the ball, under the ball. But the problem is, I really, really despise these catches taken when part of the ball touches the ground, because the way I look at it, if part of the ball, if it touches the ground in part or at least in full, it almost is a means of it's a means of saying you don't have control of the catch. And we've seen some catches taken where supposedly you're in control, but you've once it touches the ground, you can't just you can't claim that catch. And we've seen some catches being accepted, but a few other catches being denied. And Obviously, the Stark one was blatantly not out. And Glenn McGrath, I'm sorry, mate. I loved you as a bowler, but your bias has shone through over here. Stark
Yeah.
completely mucked it up with that catch, and you know it. So you need to calm down. But the
My
Stephen
thoughts on
Smith
that
catch.
catch. Of course, that's with the Ducats one. If we look at I get it. He imposed a rule that I'm totally fine with that. But the thing is, if that's T20 cricket and that's not as such, it's a normal T20 game, that's mostly going to be given out. Like the the norm, the thing that we are so used to is that that catches out. And I get I get where Morris Erasmus is coming from. Those rules says you gotta be in control of the ball, but
Yes,
also your
exactly.
body, and that's why he was wrong. Stark, he wasn't in control of the of the of course of the of his body, basically using the ball to basically stop his fall and potentially dropping the catch. So yeah, but if he's using that logic, Morris Erasmus, why did he give out the Smith one? That's my thing. Because if you're
Well,
telling me Steve Smith is in control of his body and the ball, then I'm going to disagree with you. Because he was scrambling for that ball. Personally, that's what I think. I don't know.
yeah,
What do you think?
I'm I'm gonna take a look at that particular catch in question because yeah, we're gonna see that catch being taken, and you see that his fingers were at least underneath it. And he was, of course, trying to do what Cameron Green also did by trying to make sure he did that. The problem was because there was such a huge gap between his fingers at the time, uh, it was always going to leave an impression that maybe he didn't quite have control of it. And I'm taking a look over here and seeing the pictures. He did perhaps. To his credit, I think what he tried to do was that he tried to use his fingers to just make sure that the ball didn't quite touch the ground, and then he sort of tucked them into his chest. So, uh, that I think Erasmus was probably inclined to say, 80% Smith should be given the benefit of doubt. But the problem is that cricket has always been a sort of a game where the batsman would be given the benefit of doubt. So I completely agree with you that Steve Smith should have been subjected to that particular, um, that particular yardstick there, and he wasn't, and that was some pretty poor umpiring. But as far as the start catch is concerned, I am about to watch it right now. Obviously, as Hanno said, we're not going to show it online because we do not want to run the risk of being copyrighted. But we're going to take a look at the Mitchell Stark catch right now. And yes, he was running in to get it. We see him running in now. He puts his fingers together, does the right thing, but you can see that he doesn't even have control of the catch for 1 second. He then turns his hand like this with the ball underneath him, and the ball clearly touches the turf. Now, I'm sorry, but there is absolutely no way that any umpire worth his salt could take a look at that and see that that should be given as a catch, because clearly, you know, Stark should have at least had the sense, if he wanted to try to, break his fall, at least do what Steve Smith did and tuck that ball into his chest and then roll around, protecting the ball to make sure there would be no doubt. What he did was absolutely, I wouldn't. I don't, it's not ridiculous, so to speak, but it was ridiculous to say that that should have been a catch, because clearly once it touches the turf, it was literally moving along the turf like a vacuum cleaner. And I'm sorry, but
Yeah,
there was no way that that could be given out. So Erasmus probably felt that Smith had more of a case and gave him out, but Stark's one being overruled was the correct decision. However, I still firmly believe that the benefit of doubt, whenever it comes to catches, always has to go to the batsman. Cricket has always been a batsman's game, and bowlers and fielders have always had to work hard for their wickets, and that's the way it should be. You don't want to cause any controversy in that particular regard.
Yeah. Now, look. Oh, my final point is if you're going um, to to give the Smith one out, then you have to give uh, the Stark one out. That's just mine. Because for
I
me,
get,
Smith is
I
not
get
in
that
control of the
completely.
ball or his body, and while Stark is in control of the ball, oh, but not his body. I get it. Um,
The ball was rolling along the turf, Hannah. There's no way he was in control of that. Once it touches the
uh,
turf, you're not out.
yeah,
It's as simple as that.
that's it. I guess I
Yeah.
will get to that comment.
And
So yeah, I think that's basically all.
yeah,
Your
as you said, yeah, you talk about the short ball being applied.
yeah,
First of all, huge commiserations to Ben Duckett, who also lost his wicket to a short ball, 2 runs short of a Lord's century. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy! Those emotions he must have been feeling walking all the way back to the pavilion, just awful, really. And yep, that 91-run partnership for the first wicket was wonderful, but Nathan Lyon did exactly what Joe Root did, got the batsman to charge down the track. Crawley was going so well, run a ball, but then got stumped. And then, of course, afterwards, it had to be a slightly bit more circumspect because Pope came in, started playing some decent shots, but also ended up, getting out to the short ball. And then Joe Root also, felled by the short ball. Harry Brook, Ben Stokes, not necessarily a short ball per se, but one which he tried to play to the onside, ended up edging it to the slips, and then Bairstow not lasting very long either. An ugly looking, chip to the mid wicket fielder, and in some cases it was just some stupid shots that were played, and with only Duckett and Harry Brook passing 50, or at least getting to 50, that's just a poor scorecard. And of course, it wouldn't be England without a batting collapse, as it were. But to concede a 90-odd run lead was just simply, awful and not what the doctor ordered. Of course, Australia weren't exactly saints with the ball, conceding 7 no balls of their own. Cameron Green, in particular, being responsible for overstepping 6 times, and if he hadn't have overstepped, he I think would have had at least a wicket or two more. Um, Kudos to Mitchell Stark, who justified his selection ahead of Scott Boland. He was tongued around earlier on in the innings, struggled to find his line when Crawley and Duckett were, hitting him around the park, but ended up with 3 wickets and did a really good job. And Hazelwood as well deserves praise for his comeback. Lyon, of course, economical. Cummins also workmanlike. And big shout out to Travis Head, another Joe Root style bowler who was able to turn it really well. Stephen Smith had an over of Googly before the end of, I believe, day 3, if I'm not wrong. Yep, day before the end of day 3. And I think England really have to look at their batting performance and say they completely, mucked it up by themselves. And some of the shots they played to the short ball will, really require a lot of introspection from their side. And they're going to have to really rethink their short ball strategy for the remainder of this series because you can believe that they're going to face a lot more at Headingley and in the other venues to come, which I believe should be the Trent Bridge and the Oval. Not too sure about that.
yeah. So let's get into some comments. Um, uh, Manny, this one is for you, Bailey, asking if you know anyone that lives in this area. Uh, you're just muted.
Yeah, I don't. Wrong person at the wrong time.
Okay, no worries. So yeah, Bailey unfortunately doesn't know. No. So yeah. I don't know. I think England might make it through now. Yeah, exactly. They stuck in limbo. I agree with this. 100% agree with the same. Same.
Very good
And
point there, Zane.
um, but yeah. Um, Bargev, if you can maybe tell us a bit more uh about what you mean about Mexico being kicking kicked out of the World Cup. I don't know what you mean. Just tell us a bit more. Um, Bailey, just quickly message Money on his Instagram. Um, um, then you guys can sort it out the. So yeah. Um, but if we move to Australia's second innings, of course we saw England mostly used the short ball. Um, I think that's all. Yeah, yep. There's. I will get your comments. Comments. Yeah, I said to you. I will get your comment.
Yeah, we're going to speak to your comment, mate, when we discuss the third test and previewing that, because that's a wonderful question, and we will get back to you. Yeah.
That that's here. The so Australia's second innings mostly used the short ball. Warner got LBW by Tang. Very good ball. I remember that one. But England, it's not the best scorecard at England's second innings. Again, six no balls, 14 byes, nine leg byes, seven wide. But I think the main one we need to talk about in this is it's not the short ball or anything like that. I think it's Nathan Lyon. Um, and the bravery he showed, of course, um, uh, by coming out. He was limping. He couldn't walk on that leg of his. And in the end, what he contributed, I believe, Isherwood fit was through 14, yeah, 14 runs in the end, 13, but of course Australia needed to 80 to 1, so 40. And, so he contributed a lot to that. You cut off what 14, 15. That and it almost makes England's loss a bit less. Oh, they needed 371. Sorry. Oh yeah, 91 runs. So yeah, yeah, you get me. Where I'm coming from. So yeah, it's
Yeah, I mean,
I
there's
don't
really
know who was the commentator. Um, it might have been Kevin Peterson on that time. So yeah, I don't know.
it might have been harsh, Zane, but I'm not too sure that that was really, um,
The best
a
idea.
horrible thing. But Peterson obviously is a batsman. Nathan Lyon is a bowler, a tail-ender. So you know, Peterson has his perspective. But what you said about contributing to that partnership, which took which helped Australia score another 13 runs, I believe. 15, in fact, because when Lyon came to the crease, they were 264 for 9, and they ended up being dismissed for 279, with Lyon, of course, being the last man out. Um, of course, I take Peterson's point, or the other, or whatever, whoever it was, point when they said that 4 runs in the scheme of things might not have done too well, been enough. But sometimes, you play your part as a runner, and there are some occasions where even if you don't score too many runs, just being out there in the middle in Test cricket is actually quite important because it does frustrate you. And let's not forget, Lyon also played his role in helping Australia win that first test by sticking around with Cummins and, of course, chipping Stuart Broad for that 4 all the way down to the long on boundary, which brought the target from 11 to 7 runs. So he played his part as a batsman, although by his own admission, he's not really that good. He should be batting a little bit lower, but he knows how to keep an end up. And I wouldn't necessarily go so far to say that the 15-run partnership made a big difference to the win, because if you take away 15 from 43, it's still 28. But obviously, it made it a bit more comfortable than it ended up comfortable than it would have been without it. So, as a South African fan, Hanno, you might or might not have memories of a certain Graham Smith coming out to bat for South Africa against Australia. Um, he was badly injured as well. I believe he had broken his left hand. Fortunately, of course, he was right-handed, but batted left-handed. Could barely hold the bat, but he came out to bat a little bit, and obviously, I don't know how much he scored then, but obviously, the time he took getting out there and doing his bit, it did help. I mean, South Africa eventually lost that test while Australia won this one, but there's always something about people coming out to bat if they feel comfortable batting and they feel as though they have to do something about it. But it's always the batsman's decision. If he literally can't walk and can't come out there, then you really, really cannot blame him, because that was a horrible injury that he suffered. I believe it was while he was batting that he suffered that horrific injury, because
No, no, no.
the
It was I was fielding. He wanted to go, wanted to get the ball running, and then he just felt, I believe, think one of his muscles in his
it was
calf,
the
basically.
it was the right calf, but I also seem to remember when he was batting, and when he had gone to the crease, he was also starting to limp a little bit. Maybe that fielding episode aggravated that injury. So
Yeah.
kudos to Nathan Lyon. And when we take a look at the scorecard, it's basically Khawaja who deserves all the plaudits. He deserved a century, but sadly he couldn't make it count. Once again, Tong doing really well. Broad finding his mojo and doing his bit to mop up the tail. And, you know, there were no starts in this innings. I mean, Labuschagne and Smith got into the 30s but couldn't kick on. Warner also looked good but ended up, being snared by, the tongue again. And Khawaja definitely looked in really good nick. And England deserve credit for sticking to their guns and bowling a lot better this in the second innings than they did in the first. Um, Still 6 no balls, but better than. I mean, it's still 36 extras, which is no different from the 38 extras they conceded in the first innings. And so they're really going to have to make sure they focus a lot more on improving their line. 14 buys, 9 leg buys. You know, they can also be put down to ill fortune in some respects, but again, there really is no excuse for conceding as many extras as they did. Well done to Broad, Tongue, and Robinson, 8 wickets between them. Anderson, of course, finally getting some reward for his enterprise with the wicket of Labuschagne, and Stokes coming in with the wicket of Hazelwood near the end. But England had the better of this innings, and at least when they did that, they were able to get a decent target of about 371. Yep, and but as we'll see, you do the introduction, it was all in vain in the end.
Yeah. It was. But moving to the second innings, of course, of England, and it was good. It was a good. How can I say this? Um, it started off well. It started off well with well, okay, no. Oh, wait, no. I started off horribly. England second innings. Crawley um, play that one. Ollie Pope um, bowled with an absolute snorter, as many would say. Unplayable ball, swung late, and we're going to come on to Pope. Of course, we know now that he is dropped for this next test match, but that shoulder injury, he was forced out to come and bat, I believe, by the umpires. I'll get that up now. But how bad do you think that shoulder injury could be for England? Because of course they don't really have had a true number three batsman.
Yeah, they don't, and their selection for the upcoming third test will be very worrying indeed, and we are going to come to that. And it is going to be a bit of a worry because it means that more and more pressure will be put on Joe Root to, come up the order and try and work his magic again. Of course, where in his first game after losing the captaincy, he did bat at number three, and of course has been one of England's best players since then. But it just goes to show the idea of going into an Ashes series with not that much cover in the middle order is utter stupidity, and it just goes to show that you know you have to be more prudent with all of these squad selections and approaches. And England have just displayed a lack of prudence in this regard. Ollie Pope, of course, is also England's vice captain. So with him out, who takes up the vice captaincy? Would it be Root again? Would it be Anderson? Would it be Broad? Would it be Bairstow? I really don't know. And there's a lot of, it's a small crisis that might be going on over here. As far as the shoulder injury is concerned, when I saw him bat, it didn't look as though it was. He didn't look, too inhibited, I would say. But now, of course, he's out for the rest of the series. It's we now know that it's even more serious than it was, when they could then feared. And if it was a decision to send him out and ask him to come out, then it was absolutely poor form. Because with a
Yeah,
shoulder injury, obviously, it's going to be very difficult to even control the bat and hold it, much less than play your strokes. And of course,
so
a snorter is what I'd call a short ball, but the ball which Stark bowled that got him out, as you said, swinging like coming back into him, that was what the Aussies would call an absolute ripper, and it did rip his middle stump out of the ground. So
yeah.
I think that word is a little bit appropriate here. And of course,
So
again, yeah.
um, just news on that Pope. I got it here. So the England officials have claimed Pope was told he must return to the field before he got aggravated a shoulder injury on day three of the test. So of course he had it when he dived for the ball. Oh, um, he was cleared by the umpires to bat at number three in England's first innings. Given the injury was a fresh one, suffered in the match and was from an external blow. But after Pope batted freely for 63 balls for his 42 in the first innings, umpires ordered him to return to the field on Friday if he wished to bat any higher than number 7 in England's second innings. So, oh, yeah, what can we say? So he was forced to bat again. That ended poorly with Pope hitting his same shoulder, falling for a ball after England attempted to protect him by moving him out of the slips and to mid on. So under ICC rules, players cannot bet for the amount of time they are off the field at the end of the bowling innings or until after the fifth wicket has fallen, if that counts. So,
Well,
so let's
it's
say basically you're off for the field for 2 hours, then you cannot bat for 2 hours according to the rules. So
hmm,
yeah, um,
well, unfortunate turn of events as it was. It just summed up England's innings, really, because again, there were no starts. Aside from Duckett and Stokes, that scorecard makes for absolutely horrific reading. It really only took, it just had to take Ben Stokes coming in. I mean, Stokes and Duckett with a terrific partnership 100 of 132 for the fifth wicket, and another century partnership between Stokes and I believe it was Stewie Broad of 108 for the seventh wicket. But then once Stokes went, it was basically a case of wickets falling very quickly. I know Tongue and Anderson hung around a bit, but then Tongue got bowled, and basically, for once, Stark had Josh's tongue, and the match was over. And Stokes has basically proved with this innings that it was good to see him shake off his pretty questionable form with the bat of late, and he has proved that he is the right man to captain England for the foreseeable future. But probably, it must be said, the only man who could captain. I don't think Root will want the job again, having done it for so long. Ollie Pope clearly isn't ready, and who else can lead the team? So there's a little bit of a leadership crisis at the moment, and I think Root is now at a crossroads. I think one of the one of the people who commented spoke about the limbo that England are in. Root was one of those people who spoke highly about the new approach that England have been adopting, and of course, in the second innings at Edgbaston, he tried his best to play the reverse sweep very often, and I believe he did revert. But he very nearly lost his wicket first ball in that second innings, but then did employ the reverse sweep for six, and then got out charging, trying to charge Nathan Lyon, and seeing Alex Carey do the rest. But he's made his name as a batsman of pristine, proper technique. So he will now have a big role to play if he ends up batting a bit higher up the order. He is going to have to show some leadership by reining it in and just providing some solidity. Because with Pope out, that's going to be his area of responsibility. Um, Duckett was quite magnificent, but again, we need to expect a bit more from these two at the top of the order. And Brooke will also really have questions asked about him unless he can really kick on and make a substantial innings in this high pressure series. And the less said about Johnny Bairstow's dismissal was the better. You and I are both in agreement. It was stupid, dozy cricket from a man who wasn't, in the zone at the time. He never had the focus. And all this stuff about the Australia going against the spirit of the game, we need to knock that on the head. It's a nebulous argument, as Simon Taufel said today, to sort of distract from the fact that you had a decision go against you, which was perfectly fair. And if it's within the rules, it's within the rules. This is the way sport is, and you have to put up with it. I don't condone blatant displays of foul play. I do not condone people trying to claim catches when the ball was clearly along the ground, the way Mitchell Stark did. I do not condone, what Stuart Broad did in a series several years ago. I believe it was in 2013 or 14. Yeah, summer of 2013, maybe, when he edged the ball to the slips and was caught out cleanly, but didn't walk because the umpire didn't give him out. Where was the spirit of the game then, Brody?
and
So,
look,
yeah.
uh, I get where England are coming from. Like they're upset. It's all that. But why do they complain when they did that to Colin the Gronholm?
Oh,
Gron.
I don't remember that incident with the Granham, but yeah, you know,
They did that to him. I believe the I believe the ball went to the slips, and then the Gronholm came out of his crease. He's almost attempted to run on, and then um, but he quickly went back to his crease, and then they threw the ball and hit the wickets. I'm going to try and see if I can get that. That let me just check. Um, what? Um, let me. Um,
Yeah, you're talking about when he was run out by Ollie Pope, or
oh, yeah, I believe it was Olive Pope. And they did it here. To look. And I also tried it with Labashane. Yeah, I got it. Yeah,
yeah,
this is
that's
the
the
one.
thing. I mean, people who live in glass houses should never throw stones. And if you want to complain about the spirit of the game, you've got to be the ones to uphold that spirit. I mean, it's just
Look.
sickening, really, from England, and it's sour grapes. It's as simple as that. And
So
there
this
is
is on. Yeah, this looks like Lords. It might be Edgbaston. Uh, there you can see they try to do that. Kerry goes there. Yeah, they did it on day 3. So let's see.
right.
Labashane. And then they did it. Look, they tried. So why are they complaining? And
Exactly, exactly, exactly. And
so yeah.
yeah, it's just it's ridiculous. I mean, the biggest bleaters happen to be the biggest cheaters in this case. Get your act together, boys. Seriously, I still can't quite get the ground hum one, but again, that's just it's just further proof that England have no business complaining when the shoe's on the other foot.
So let's. I'm going to try and find it.
That's all right. I mean, we might need to save some time by talking about a lot of other things. So
Yeah. But while I will try and get that. But your thoughts on Stokes and is magnificent innings really?
as I've said, he's the right person to captain the team, the only person to captain the team. We never should have had to depend on his terrific innings to try to give ourselves some, respectability. But it sort of is what it is. And that scorecard, as I've said, without Stokes and, of course, without Duckett, it makes for disgusting reading. And several of those batsmen will have to look back and say, you know what? We should have done better. We could have done better. We let the nation down. And it is what it is. But with Stokes, it was like Headingley all over again, and Australians would have had their hearts in their mouths. But fortunately for them, um, they ended up getting Stokes out just when he looked set to continue, and and I think as Chelsea fans said, when Ben went out, everything just fell apart. I think Robinson and Broad went quite quickly, and then only Tongue was left to hang around with Anderson, and he didn't last too long either. So, yeah, it's a case of England really failing, and Stokes Duckett giving them some respectability. But we've got a lot of work to do, and we're really going to have to start learning how to really deal with the short ball. And I'm reminded of former Australian coach Bob Simpson, who was able to coach Steve Waugh in playing the short ball. Basically, Simpson's instructions were that War had to watch the ball as soon as it left the bowler's hand, right out of it. So that way, when you watch the ball and its trajectory, you can sort of see the direction of the ball, where it's taking, and sort of start to work in your mind, whether it's with triggers or whatever, sort of figure out how to play that. And when it comes to short ball, playing the short ball, even if you sort of look really ugly, just trying to, tap it away from harm's way and just run a single, it doesn't matter because at least you're going to be not out. And Steve Waugh's problem was that he was technically much too side on at the time. So he didn't really have the time to adjust his technique. Simpson taught him to open up his stance a lot more, and those are basically the techniques that England will need to try and adopt if they're going to have any chance of doing well against the short ball in the remainder of the series. Because believe you me, that is going to be used very, very frequently.
Yeah. Look, I think Ben Stokes, great player, great innings, and I think he will also feel a bit gutted with uh, how he was uh, how what how it got out and not really identifying what truly happened. So yeah, I'm going to try and get out. Um, yeah, like Jason said there. Um, oh, after the after after Ben went out, it was basically gone gone downhill from there. So yeah, nothing really else to say on that. That but is there anything else we could possibly discuss? To discuss Pope. The amount of short balls. Let's discuss that. Of course, Cameron Green bought a few short balls in the first innings of England, but the amount of short balls. Are you surprised by that? That we have seen.
Not really, no, because look, when it comes to a series as prestigious as the Ashes, you've got to do everything you possibly can to make sure that the other team just doesn't have an advantage. And when it comes to playing the short ball, if you spot a weakness, you exploit it. Whether it's the short ball or the fast pitched up Yorker or any kind of or with a spinner basically bowling into the rough or trying to, get out a left-hander by sort of bowling the Chinaman googly and having it turn sharply in. You exploit a weakness, and it doesn't surprise me in any way. So, yeah, it just means that batsmen on both sides are going to have to work even harder to try and overcome that. And as I've said, Simpson had his plan for Steve Waugh, and Steve Waugh went on to become the best batsman in the world for the majority of the 90s, and of course earned his fame as one of the better players of short pitched bowling. There's also some talk about how if you're tall, you don't really have the ability to, in theory, duck when a bowler is pitched short and coming at you quite hard, and you also don't have the benefit of a lower center of gravity, which means that unless you're someone like a Sachin Tendulkar in his prime, or someone like even a David Warner or what have you, who aren't the tallest of batsmen, you aren't really able to, in theory, work around that. And we've seen that with the likes of Harry Brook and Cameron Green, how uncomfortable they felt with the short ball. So you are going to have to work hard on your technique, and the batsmen are going to really have to, see what they can possibly do about it. Maybe getting, someone like an Andrew Flintoff to bowl some of some short stuff at them, because of course when he was in his pomp in the Ashes series, he was famous for his mastery of the short stuff. About 6'4", big fella, really was able to bowl a very heavy ball, bring it down from a height and really make it sort of come at the batsman. So no, I'm not surprised that the short ball has been used, and teams have to do what they have to do. So it is what it is.
Yeah. Um. What can we do? So yeah. Um, but I'm going to let you discuss. Of course, we'll come to these questions now. But Zain Markwood is fit, and we'll come to your comment of England. Let me just get the lineups up. In England cricket. Where's that lineups? Here we go. So Mark Wood is fit and is in the lineup. Now, um, and we'll get to this question also. But Manny, go through that English team.
Yep, as I've said, Ollie Pope's injury has caused a problem. Now, it looks as though instead of Joe Root, it will be Harry Brook coming up to bat at number 3. And this is going to be either a statement of intent or hopefully something that can be, tweaked a bit depending on the situations here. Because if Headingley's ground, which has always aided fast bowlers, looks like another seaming track or maybe even a swinging track, I really am not too comfortable with the prospect of Harry Brook, potentially coming over there and being all at sea against Australia's bowlers. I'd sooner have someone like Joe Root coming back in who at least can tighten up his game whenever he needs to. But he will have to decide to rein it in and save the reverse sweep for another day. Preferably. And with Johnny Bairstow batting at number 5, and no folks, despite there being wokes, it means that Bairstow will still have the gloves, and he will be under a bit more pressure to try to make sure that his keeping is crisp and spot on. I would have liked to have seen Ben Folkes come in to at least provide some solidity to the batting lineup, but Moeen Ali and Chris Wokes are decent batsmen. I wouldn't necessarily trust them to, play a big innings to save a life, but they could possibly hang in there. And I suppose with Wokes, of course, having a test century, it does, at least in theory, lengthen the batting to 8, because then, of course, you've got Mark Wood, Ollie Robinson, and then Stuart Broad coming in at number 11. You could just see Stuart Broad at one time was considered a possibility to become England's next best all-rounder, but then he started focusing more on his bowling. His batting ended up, deteriorating, and now it is what it is. Of course, it is nice to know that your number 11 does have a test century, but then Jimmy Anderson had a test best of 81, and he's now dropped. Speaking of Anderson, of course, dropping him has to be the right decision because he hasn't. I wouldn't say he's looked toothless, but he hasn't really been at his penetrative best. He hasn't really been able to make the best use of the conditions, and so keeping Stuart Broad in, keeping Ollie Robinson in, bringing Mark Wood and Chris Wokes back in as a replacement for both him and Tong. Dropping Tong might sound a little bit harsh, but when you consider that Tong was a replacement for Mark Wood, I suppose Wood might be more of the complete package. Someone who is, able to bowl extremely quickly, but also looks quite strong and also can take advantage of conditions at Headingley. It might not be a bad idea. And this actually segues back into Daz Reynolds' question. You basically wanted to know who we'd open the bowling with if England were to bowl first tomorrow. For me, it would probably be Broad and Wood who would open the bowling, and Robinson and Wokes can come in as first and second change. Then Moeen Ali to provide some spin. I really don't want to see Ben Stokes bowling again if he doesn't feel comfortable doing so. Although if he has to come on as a last resort as more of a part-timer these days, then so be it. And then, of course, we've got Joe Root on his home ground, with his occasional off spin. I only hope that the other Yorkie, Bairstow, will get his act together behind the gloves. So Pope's injury, as I've said, doesn't do us any favors. Although in theory our batting is lengthened, it puts a lot of pressure on Joe Root and Harry Brook to make sure they come good. And Bairstow will be expected to keep his focus. So if I were Geoffrey Boycott, Yorkshire and England legend, I'd be speaking to those two boys and say, lads, cut out the Bazball shenanigans. This is now a time for typical gritty attritional cricket. You have to judge the moment when it's time to play your big shots. You've also got to know the moment when it's time to, start to play more circumspectively. And most of all, keep your focus on and do not switch off at any time. Otherwise, I'd hit you with my bat. I can't get the Yorkie accent, but it is what it is. And to answer your question, at what pace can Wood bowl at? Well, Wood basically has been selected for his ability to bowl exceptionally quickly, and we're going to find out about that now, courtesy of Wikipedia or whatever. And he was, of course, supposed to play in the IPL. I don't think he was able to do that. But yeah, my internet connection is really not doing me any favors. But he's been
Yeah,
selected for his ability to, hit the deck. So he will be expected to bowl the short stuff. And at the basically, if we take a look at his bowling speed, um, um, he has the ability to bowl in excess of 150 kilometers an hour, almost at the 90-mile-an-hour range. So it is express pace. Of course, the worst part about being able to bowl at that pace is that you are more susceptible to injury. Ask Brett Lee and Shoaib Akhtar if you don't believe me. But yeah, so open the bowling with Broad and Wood. Get the best out of those two. Bring Chris Wokes and Robinson on as first change. Ali and maybe Root to come on for some spin. And Stokes should not bowl himself at all unless times are desperate that they need a wicket any which way. Simple as that. I hope that
yeah,
answers your
I
questions, Daz.
agree. I think this lineup, eh, mm, it's a difficult one because you look the changes they made. You would say they are fair changes, except the tongue one. If it comes to Zane's comments here, I would have done the same. I would have dropped Robinson, kept tongue personally, but I have gone with a bit of more pace. So what can I say? They're looking for a bit of extra pace, nice, and that's fair that they want to do that.
Yeah. And credit to Robinson, he actually bowled well in Australia's first innings at Lords and didn't do too badly in the second innings. In fact, we're just going to find out how many wickets he took. He also took 5 wickets in the match, so it would have pretty much been between Robinson and Tongue, and maybe they felt that Robinson's experience meant that he kept his place. And Wood and Tongue are sort of like for like bowlers, so you can't really have two bowlers of the same ilk bowling. You want to sort of have that variety. Wood can definitely hit the deck, and Robinson can also try and swing it. So they wanted to get that old-fashioned variety. So it is very unfortunate for Tongue. I thought he was quite magnificent in getting both David Warner and Steve Smith out in both innings. But I guess if conditions aren't quite in his favor, he probably could struggle a little bit. And so, if Mark Wood is fit, bringing him back in is a bit of a no-brainer. Wokes is a bit of a surprise, but he can do much more than keep his end up. And as I said, he also adds to the batting a little bit.
Yeah, he does. He does. But I think I would have kept Chan because he can also contribute with the bets. But yeah, I think depending if they lose or win this test match. Was basically this test match is a free because they're retaining the Ashes Australia. It's just about if it's going to be a draw or what goes what a 2-0 up. Unless England won, they retain the Ashes. So yeah,
Exactly.
um,
So it's the first of three cup finals for England, as one would say.
yeah.
Drawing is not an option.
Australia, I think Todd Murphy will come in for line, and I think that's the only change. They wouldn't change that much.
Exactly,
Maybe bring
exactly. I
in
think
Poland. Maybe
I
bring
don't
in.
think so. I mean, because if you want to bring Boland back in, he'd have to come in for someone like Hazelwood. And both
Yeah,
Hazelwood and Stark actually bowled quite well at Lords. Stark justified his selection. He was expensive in his first few overs in the first innings, don't get me wrong. I mentioned that. But once he got his line right and did what he had to do, he was almost unstoppable. That ball to dismiss Pope was absolutely brilliant, but he also knows how to work the short stuff. He simply right now is being treated like Australia's bowling linchpin, a bit like how Mitchell Johnson was. The only problem is that when it comes to the Aussie left-hand, as we've seen in recent history, they either have a tendency to be very sharp on their day, but when they're on an off day, they spray the ball everywhere. And that seems to be the problem with a lot of these Aussie left-handers, these Aussie left-arm seamers. I, of course, am old enough to remember the days of Wasim Akram, arguably the greatest left-arm seamer in history. And, of course, Australians in days of yore will remember Alan Davidson and Bruce Reid. But England, surprisingly enough, ever since the days of Alan Mullally, who was brought up in Australia after being born in England, have never really had a decent left arm seamer who could really, add that variety to the attack. But I guess, in fairness, maybe England have never needed one, or maybe they just couldn't produce one. But back to your question, I wouldn't bring Boland back in. It is unfortunate, but that is the brutality of selection. With Australia's bowling attack having done well, Murphy is a like-for-like replacement for Lyon, off spinner, and of course you've got Travis Head who can turn it over, get a couple of wickets. Steve Smith also is an option with his leg break googly. So Australia are well set, and I think Chelsea fan has said that Australia will win number three. Sadly, I think sadly the way the Aussie juggernaut are going, I cannot see England winning. So I think Australia will retain the Ashes, and yeah, I believe the fourth test is at Old Trafford, and it's going to depend. I mean, obviously, Daz, there is some sentimentality involved with, Anderson being at Old Trafford. This is his home ground, a final Ashes test. He is coming near the end. But to answer your question, no, I really don't think so. Although, if we do end up losing the Ashes, it could very well be that Anderson does get brought back because it's effectively now a dead rubber. We cannot win the series. But this England team, if they're ruthless enough to drop Anderson for Headingley, a ground which has been good to him over his career, then I really don't see them recalling him for Old Trafford unless, things really go pear shaped or there is another serious injury. But yeah, I don't see us coming back, says Chelsea fan. And sadly, the best I can hope for would possibly be, a draw for England. But my head tells me that Australia should be able to win this third test. Their batsmen are in better form than England's are at the moment. And their bowlers are also hungrier and sharper and up for it. It hurts me to say this, but that's pretty much how I'm going. And I'm going for Australia to win by either 40 runs or 5 wickets.
uh, my prediction: England. No, sorry, Australia with 30 runs, or well, yeah, in the range of 30 runs, or win by three three wickets.
You like to predict these close finishes, don't you, son?
Well, I think it's all going to be entertaining. So
Yeah.
yeah, um,
So there is some other
yeah,
cricket news, obviously, and I think we might want to talk about the World Cup qualifiers, huh? They come to their conclusion very soon.
yeah, they can. Um, um, I will get that up now. Yeah. Le- oh, you got one. Okay, cool. And of course, the women's ashes. That's also one to look at. But
Yep, England did win their game today by 3 runs, so big up to the ladies. But they are going to have to repeat that performance. They've already lost the Test and the first T20 international, so they need
so
to win all their remaining games to get the Ashes back. But it's a start.
uh, so I believe it's the winner of Scotland and Netherlands, and then Sri Lanka was in this go to the final. I believe.
No,
Yeah.
there is no final. It's the top 2 teams in the Super Six who go through. I mean, they go through the tournament. If there is a final, I think Sri Lanka are guaranteed to finish top of that group. So it will be between Scotland and the Netherlands. But as a South African, I don't know how you feel about Zimbabwe, but your heart must break for them, mustn't it?
What? Yeah, yeah, they now out. Yeah, they lost to Scotland. I'm surprised they did lose to them, especially at home too. Oh, that's gutsy. I'd love to
You know,
see them there, but I think 50 over is a bit too much for them. I think they're more T20.
that could be a case. The sad thing is, though, that in their first few matches, they were literally running through teams like a hot knife through butter. And the way they defeated the West Indies, and of course, Sean Williams, of course, literally was having the time of his life, scoring exactly 600 runs at an exact average of 100, and a lot was expected of him. There was always a part of us, though, that when you consider consider Zimbabwe and the word Super Six, they don't go well together. A lot of older fans, myself included, will remember 1999 when, after shockingly qualifying from their group for the Super Sixes with a 4 point bonus, and seeing their match against New Zealand washed out, ensuring them a point. All they needed to do was secure another point or two in their next 2 games to go through, but they choked against Australia. They were pummeled by Pakistan. Both of those defeats destroyed their net run rate. And New Zealand beating India convincingly made sure that the Kiwis and not the Chevrons went to the semi finals. And of course, New Zealand lost to Pakistan. Australia beat South Africa in that Titanic semi final. And then we all know what happened. And then even 2018, they contrived to lose to the UAE and put themselves out of contention. And that loss to Sri Lanka, when they were bowled out very cheaply and conceded those runs at a fair nick, it destroyed their run rate. And this defeat really was the final nail in their coffin. It was a case of, the pressure being a little bit too much in front of their home fans. And you have to feel for the likes of Craig Irvine, Secunda Raza, Sean Williams, and one or two others who were there in 2018 as well. Who knows when these guys will get a chance to qualify for the 50 over World Cup again? But then, as you've said, Hanno, maybe T20 is more of their calling.
Yeah. Of course, the women's ashes. I believe it's now 6-2 with the scoring. Um, we'll see if England can make win it. They need to win basically almost everything from here on.
Yes.
So we'll see. But I think that's. Um, I don't know if we will be live tomorrow for watch long to the last
I
to
would
the
be more than happy to do a watch along for the first session of play because I don't have work this time around, and I'd be happy to, do a watch along for the first session. As far as the evening session is concerned, it will depend on what time I can be available. I can certainly try and let you know beforehand. Capiche?
now if you can do the morning session, I I won't be able to do it. If you can maybe do it on your own, that would be, be fine with me. I think Friday should be a bit better. So yeah. Mm.
Brilliant. Will do.
So yeah, but that's that. I'll see you all in a bit, people. Peace out.